First of all, I'd like to thank my panel here. And to get us started, I wanted each of them to introduce themselves and also their company. So Lauren, why don't you go ahead and get started with Arch?
Hi, everyone. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Arch Insurance North America. I've been in commercial insurance my entire career with roles spanning IT, underwriting, and operations. Arch Insurance is a leading commercial P&C carrier, and we're about 20 years old. So you'll see by comparison, I'm representing sort of the standard legacy insurance carrier relative to a startup.
All right. And gentlemen, I don't know who's going to do it, Chris or Brian?
I'll go. So I'm Bryan Ballatore. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Open Road Insurance, and we are a classic and collector car MGA startup. So we are personal auto, but we only insure modern enthusiast classic and collector vehicles. And so we come in with a special product designed to benefit the needs of enthusiasts versus personal auto. And we built our products, our endorsements, our features, our servicing and claims all around that community and that world so that we can serve them regarding where they interact with the community, with their vehicles, and through their insurance needs. And
to that point, while they're 20 years old, you're still relatively young compared to some of our insurers in our space. But Open Road is actually just went live this year as a MGA startup backed by private equity. So we're seeing a lot of that in the industry. So let's go ahead and get started. So earlier this year, AM Best published a report back in May that provided a really telling financial assessment of P&C insurers based on how they correlated the innovation ratings that they gave the previous year to the financial results of those insurers. And quite frankly, when I read it, it was like, oh my gosh. I called Eden from AM Best and they said, it's the first time I've seen real financial results relative to investing in technology, investing into the business from an innovation standpoint. And here are some kind of key things. They saw those that had higher innovation ratings at the very top. They had higher net premium written growth. They had lower expense ratios and greater efficiencies. And for those that were non-innovative, they represented the majority of the downgrades we saw in the last year. So let's talk about how each of you have kind of focused on transformation and innovation from a well-established business to a new one. So Lauren, maybe you want to kind of start. What's been your strategy and approach?
Absolutely. So for context, I joined Arch a little over 18 months ago. There was not an operations function. So I was brought in with the mandate of establishing operations as a competitive advantage for Arch without losing the uniqueness and specialization that makes all of our business units highly competitive and differentiated in the marketplace. So my strategy has been to create digital transformation across people, process, technology, and data. And I believe that we really can't mature as a business unless you're addressing all four of those points at the same time. So several things were kicked off in parallel. From a people standpoint, there was a lot of organizational design work and standardizing of roles, and then moving similar job functions into teams so that they could benefit from each other's knowledge. From a process standpoint, we established a common business process architecture, and we are still working our way through each business unit, aligning those processes to be as common as possible to that architecture. From a technology standpoint, in order to figure out where to start, we did a current state assessment of our technology ecosystem across underwriting, claims, billing, and I will talk more about kind of where we decided to go with that. But ultimately, that's how we crafted a North Star vision of where we needed to go with our technology. And then from a data standpoint, there was actually already a data transformation in place when I joined, but much like many other carriers, we're working towards moving to common data stores and data lakes and having a single source of truth that is also complemented by a data governance strategy so that the data that goes in is accurate and usable.
So Chris, maybe you kind of talk about from an Open Road perspective, kind of what you guys looked at from a strategy.
So this niche of classic car insurance, it's pretty small. There's not a lot of players in it, and there's been a lot of consolidation as of late. And there's just a lot of legacy technology, and it's a great business. The loss ratios are very low, but the expense ratios are high because of that legacy technology and a lot of manual processes and things like that. And so we felt like there was a real opportunity to go into a greenfield environment and build out a system that is really clean and efficient, digital first, web-based, a lot of straight-through processing, and clean up those experiences and for the consumer, and also to keep our expenses down as well, because we can get a lot of efficiencies out of that. And so that's been our approach. And our goal is to, because we felt like there's also a lot of subsidizing in this space of this, because these cars are on the regular books and they bring they're at a very low loss ratio, but they don't get the price breaks that they probably should because of that. And so we felt like we're both collectors, and we felt like we owed that to the collector community, is to give them, pass those savings from efficiency onto them and still be able to give them a very good product at a much better price point.
So you talked about technology, and that's obviously part of, the strategy that you guys are looking at. And man, technology is changing so rapidly that it's hard to kind of keep up with it. So Ryan, maybe you can start from an open road perspective. What were the technology drivers and requirements, and what were the expectations of this new foundation that you wanted to create that kind of dealt with the challenges that you talked about, Chris?
Yes, actually, Chris and I were just having this conversation, and for the longest time, insurers would compare themselves to other insurers, right? Is the process good compared to other insurance buying processes? But that's not how consumers react nowadays. It's not, their behavior is not, oh, well, let me compare Progressive to Allstate to Open Road. It is, how quickly can I buy insurance relative to how fast I can buy paper towels on Amazon? And that's just the expectation. So one of our key differentiators was, how can we make this really simple, fast for our consumers, whether they're our partners, our agent partners, or our direct consumer clients? And you need technology in order to do that. Right? So we needed a platform and a system and a quote flow and a process that not only builds trust through the process, so our consumers and our partners understand how our product is differentiated, why they need it for themselves or their customers, but also gets them from A to Z as quickly and seamlessly as possible, because there is no margin for error anymore. And so as Chris mentioned, our competitors they built their processes around a different behavior. And we're trying to build for a behavior that is just beginning today, particularly with the collectors as they get younger, and their expectations as they move forward in their lives.
Okay. Lauren, it's a little bit more of a challenge for you because you're sitting on some legacy technology, but you're looking at changing that technology. And what is kind of your requirements and expectations?
So Arch was making substantial technology investments, but the reality was that the business didn't feel like they were getting enough value for those investments. So we really approached our situation from the perspective of, how do we get more return on investment for the technology dollars we're already spending? And, over the 20 years Arch has grown up, there was a very siloed approach to letting each business unit do what was right and what was best to enable growth within that unit. And I think that's a pretty common situation across carriers. So we took a step back and said, we think what we need to be doing is have a strategy that's actually investing in more enterprise-grade capabilities so that multiple business units are getting value from those investments, and we are ultimately building, a scalable ecosystem. So I mentioned that current state assessment and North Star vision. The two most notable things that we identified as needing to put in place was an engagement layer, whether it be for our underwriters, our claims adjusters, our billing professionals, but a single pane of glass that enables them to do everything they need to do for their jobs. The current state had been anywhere from 10 to 12 systems being touched in order to execute on getting a quote out to our brokers. So that was really the key initiative we wanted to tackle. And then in order to enable that, we needed a platform integration layer so that all of our systems could talk to each other, because we do have a very complex existing ecosystem of core systems and supporting systems, and all of that data needs to be elevated into this engagement layer. So that's really where we started our focus over the past year, has been putting those in place. And that's going to give us the foundation to then plug in, analytics and all of the AI and newer technologies as they become available, and or swap out components. So that was the approach we took because we we didn't have the benefit of a greenfield, and those core systems that we do have are not easy to just replace. So this is a way to work with them, but still provide that really efficient experience.
So whether you're putting in a greenfield like you guys have done, or whether you're kind of transforming, ultimately what we want to do as organizations is really provide a foundation that can really provide sustainable growth and also allow you to really innovate. Because like it or not, everything is constantly changing. Customer expectations, our risk is changing. So it really has to be something that's going to be scalable, to your point, Lauren, but also really flexible to be able to do those things. So maybe start with you guys from an Open Road perspective. How do you see this platform really helping you kind of achieve those growth objectives, but also innovation? Because I think you got a new classic car agent here, Denise, last night at dinner.
We do.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, I'm going to be promoting this, to my neighbors.
I've never paid an agent so much commission, though. You want to start with that one then?
Yeah, so I think when we started, we needed everything. So we took the whole platform. So we have the policy admin system, we needed claims, we needed billing, we needed a website. So as we started to look at, our options there, really Majesco was a great fit for us because they offered all of that. And being able to have that all integrated together, and that was a big piece of what we wanted to do, was minimize complexity. And so we are not a tech-heavy staff. We have very limited tech teams. And so we were able to partner with Majesco on all of that, and it just takes away all the finger pointing. When something's broken, it's all there, right? And we still have integrations as you normally would through APIs that we have to call out to other vendors and things, but it's very much minimal. And so that's helped us as we go forward. We can iterate with Majesco and get those advantages. And the other thing that we've done is just really try to, our saying is, don't solve for the exception. And so as we built this out, there were certain things that happened 2% of the time or 5% of the time that we just said, we're either not going to do it or it's going to be a manual process. Because rather than putting some random endorsement on the website that 1% of the people will pick and cluttering the website up or making it more challenging to get through, like Bryan said, we chose to stay away from all of that. And so those type of things allow us to, get those inches and continue to innovate.
Anything you want to add from innovation? Because as the CRO, I'm sure product innovation is top of mind for you.
It is. We have to constantly adapt to what our consumers are looking for, right? And that means, because we're omni-channel, that is both our agent partners and our direct clients. So the flexibility is really, really important. And as you talked about, Chris mentioned this gain of inches. What we're able to do is we're able to look at the full flow, the full process, no matter which channel they come through, and we can analyze and adapt and iterate to those inches. Can I save 7 seconds? We spent weeks, earlier summer, concerned with, it was literally 5 to 7 seconds of time. Can we make it faster? And because what we can learn from, and with a partner, we understand how that impacts yield. We understand how that impacts my partners. Right? We also, our business is pretty unique. We need lots of agents because they all have 3, 5, 7 PIF. That's it. We're not going to agencies that have thousands of policies for us. We have lots of agencies that have small numbers of PIFs. So if it's not fast, it's not easy. Same with our clients. We're going to lose out on that business to standard carriers. So not only does it have to be fast and easy from that perspective, but we have to continuously change as their needs and behaviors evolve as well. The product as well. That's from a filing perspective. We understand that world really well, but from a technology perspective, and we're talking about that flexibility to adapt and iterate and change is really, really important for us, particularly as a small company. And we will gain that momentum if we can't stay on top of all of that. And so for us, it's truly the basis of our existence.
Yeah,
right?
I think that low code, no code has been a big thing for us too, is, especially as we launched, there's just tons of iterations because you don't know what you don't know until you go live, and you have to start tweaking things so fast and rapidly that you have to have a partner that's fast with you, but you also have the ability to do that yourself with low code, no code, user maintained tables.
Yeah. So Lauren, I'll let you kind of respond, but you've got a little bit of a different challenge taking all these separate divisions and trying to kind of create an enterprise layer where it's appropriate and bring everybody in to say, no, we're going to do it kind of consistently this way to be able to really provide sustainable growth, but also as a platform for innovation. So why don't you kind of talk about that?
Absolutely. So I really think about underwriting having bookends, so pre-quote and post-bind, where you can be very similar across your businesses. And it's that core underwriting and what data you're looking at and how you analyze a risk and price a risk that needs to be different and bespoke. And so the modularity that we've put in place really enables that. And, we're hyper focused on what analytics and what data we're putting into each of our products to get our underwriters to a place where they can make the best decisions. And I think in addition to supporting our existing business units, the benefit of this modularity is we could easily add on new business units or new products, as those opportunities present themselves. And then I also, in the same vein on the low code, no code, we've experienced the same thing. I mean, so from an internal innovation standpoint, our teams are cross-functional, and I make sure that I have my analytics team and my technology team, my operations and my underwriting teams all together. And the low code, no code platform really enables us to take very quick action when people have ideas and want to represent data a different way, or color code one of our predictive models so that it really jumps out at underwriting. Like, all of that's been very easy to ideate and take action on. So I think there's innovation that we're working on both internally and how we develop, and then obviously supporting the external product innovation in what Arch is putting forth to the marketplace.
So when we were getting together, and you mentioned it, Bryan, I just love that term, game of inches, because it really, I think, goes back to the essence of some of the challenges that we've had in the industry. We've been transforming for the last 20 years, 20, 30 years, and now we're in the cloud, and we're transforming to the cloud in many cases. But in all of those transformations, we never really looked at the operating model. We just kind of took old technology out and we put new technology in, and we never really optimized it. It just became a little bit more expensive. And we tried to do those 2% or those 3%. And so we kind of highly customized. Today, it is about the game of inches because profitability is challenged, and it's got to drive from a unit cost perspective. And I think we now are at a point with Gen AI embedded that it gives us that opportunity to truly see some optimization and efficiencies that we haven't seen in decades. So Bryan, I'm going to let you kind of take the first here, you and Chris. Mm-hmm. You guys are live with our intelligent core that has the Gen AI capabilities in there, and you have helped us with some of the benchmarking that we've been doing. Talk about the impact that you're seeing that's going to give you as you kind of bring on new staff from a training perspective, but also just being able to play that game of inches against your competitors.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We, for the longest time, as technology has advanced, we were thinking about, how do I use technology to support our servicing and sales teams? But we're at a point now where you can almost flip that narrative. And I have a technology, it's the core. I have servicing and sales that support the technology. And Gen AI kind of is sort of that incubator, right? If your technology is good enough, it's scalable, flexible, and we work hard on all those inches, the least number of questions, the quickest time in between, then you have a sales and servicing team that supports that behavior versus the other way around. For us, that's critical because it keeps all of our expenses down. You talk about that margin. If I can keep my sales and servicing teams minimal and lean on my technology, I can scale and I can keep my expenses down. And that helps with training as well, right? So smaller teams, they can be more focused, but we don't have to put so much effort into onboarding. If the system is intuitive, if we built the system so well, we ask the right questions for the flow, right? We talk about this. We're constantly trying to cut questions from our consumer because we can understand their behavior based on how they respond to one or two questions. And then you train to that. Instead of having a sales team that has to understand 100 points of entry, you need to know 7, which means you can have smaller teams that are more focused, less training, they can onboard quicker, and they support that technology. And then you spend your time understanding how your consumers and your partners are working themselves through the flow, using the technology, understanding your product, and continuously tweak it so that you get even more efficient there, so that you can continue to operate with smaller teams on the backside.
Great. Anything to add, Chris?
Yeah, I would just say as we were picking partners, the AI conversation came up, and as a startup, like it's going to be a long time before we're splitting atoms with AI at Open Road. So, but we needed to pick partners that had a roadmap and were building it into their base products, and that we could leverage already, right, with some of those, and that they're doing the R&D for us, and we're never going to be in a spot where we're employing a bunch of data scientists and things. So it was really critical that we picked partners like Majesco that was ahead of the game, and that we could, hook our wagon up to and follow along.
So, Lauren, I know that you're not yet on the intelligent version of our solution, but you're looking at it, and you're looking at the opportunities and possibilities. Kind of as a person looking at it, what do you see, and why would you be interested in that?
So, I think we have really, and many other companies, I think the foundation of using AI started with data extraction and data enrichment. And I think now everyone's looking for what is the next iteration of Gen AI, and how do I drive my business forward using that? We did really try to streamline the process, the questions we're asking. What does the underwriter need to know? How do we actually just derive that information instead of having it be a question someone needs to fill out? And so AI has been very powerful in moving us along that journey. And I think we're really looking at partners to help take the use of AI forward, because while I do actually have a pretty robust analytics division, I think we're all searching for how do we best use this technology and innovate. And actually was having an interesting conversation last night where I think these next generation of large language models are actually going to have a lot of process decisioning capabilities, and will not only be interesting in an underwriting capacity, but how you can start to automate a lot of the supporting processes. So I'm very eager to see how that starts to evolve. But internally, in terms of how we're spending our efforts, we have a couple pilot use cases that we've identified, but we're trying to be very focused and intentional about where we're pursuing.
Yep. So you've kind of covered a lot of different areas, and I'd like to kind of focus in on what lessons have you guys learned that you would share with the audience regarding, first, organizational structure, focus and alignment to priorities, process first, with a focus on rethinking modern insurance, and then obviously your technology decisions. So Lauren, I'll let you kind of start. It's a broad.
I was going to say I could comment on all of it.
Feel free to comment on any and all, and then we'll open it up for some questions.
So I think we have found real power in having a unified set of priorities across a large company like Arch. We are seeing better return on investment when we have fewer initiatives that affect multiple business units. From an org design standpoint, one of biggest things I did that I think made an impact was to really separate who's focused on running the business and further optimizing what that looks like, but then having a completely separate team focused on transformation. There is, in the past, we had tried to have people from the run side kind of dual hat and transform, and it's different skill sets. It's hard to have two different jobs. So we've found, that it's really helped us accelerate by having an org structure that separates those responsibilities. And, process first is just so foundational. I talked about needing to evolve across people, process, tech, and data at the same time in order to really reach new maturity levels. So we have been very focused on standardizing process and optimizing that process before we layer new technology on top. And I think it's important to realize you can do those things in parallel. You don't need to do, process necessarily in full before you start the tech design. You just have to have that same end state in mind. So we're really trying to move our existing people and process forward while the tech that we're building knows what that end state looks like, and then they're going to meet up and be the processes and the people will be able to adopt the new technology seamlessly.
And for those that are thinking of having a startup or are a startup or private equity who's doing a startup, would you recommend being a part of a startup? First off?
Absolutely not.
No, seriously, what would you guys give as a recommendation?
Yeah, I think for us, we talked about driving out the complexity, and one of the things we tried to do was take things out of the box as the system gives it to us, and not do a bunch of customization and add that complexity and cost. And in theory, that is really good, and I think we did a fairly decent job on it, and only added when it was really a value add to the client, or it was so much pain that we couldn't endure it, and we had to give in and do a customization. But I'll tell you, that process is really hard. It's easy to say out of the box, and then you start to look at it, and our human nature is, this is how the old system used to do it, or the system that I had before that, and it worked. So of course, we just sort of end up replicating the same thing with the new system. And what we did is we started to recognize that and just really challenge ourselves and say, all right, how do we make this work with the in the box? And that forced us to change our processes that were antiquated, that we would have brought along with us, had we not done that. So I think that was a really big learning for us. Another learning for us as a startup is if you get the right people in the room with the right decision-making authority, you can go a lot faster. And, there's not the bureaucracy. And we've really tried to, like I said, be tech light and just figure it out ourselves. And the systems that are available now compared to 20 years ago, you can do it. And you have to get the business folks have to get a little bit more technical, but it is possible and makes for a pretty nimble and lean organization.
Bryan, anything to add?
Yeah, obviously as a startup, it's probably not hard for you to imagine that we learned a lot. We're still learning every day. I think for us, everything Chris said, 100% accurate. On top of that, I think if I had to give one recommendation, it would be extremely clear on what you're trying to accomplish. What are those pillars of your value prop? Then narrow it down to 2 or 3, and think about them in every decision you make. It's very easy to get slightly off track. And before you realize it, you've got to correct. It happens with large organizations, probably even easier, but it still happens when there's 10 folks. And so one thing we learned is you almost like create your philosophy, you write it down, and then every decision you make should point to one of those philosophies. And if it doesn't, it may not actually be that important. Mm-hmm. And what you find at the end of the day is there's a lot of decisions you make, or a lot of features or benefits you add in that may actually not be that important. And if you can cut some of those out, to Chris's point, you can take an idea, you can build something pretty significant with a very small team in a very short period of time and get to market. And then from there, you can start to add on complexity if you feel like it's necessary. But it's really tough to go from 0 to market if you try to build in all that complexity from the beginning. Figure out what's important, figure out what you're going to go to market with that's going to set you apart, and just focus on it obsessively every single day. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you might get to a point where you get to market, and then you can start to worry about some of the details and features later.
Something, I was on a panel with some other people, and something I've always said, because I was one of these inside of an insurance company, that was focused on change and innovation. You almost need the rebel browsers.
Oh, yeah.
That really think from an outside in perspective versus that inside, because even as a startup, you're bringing people with experience, right, and it's their basis of experience instead of somebody who kind of has a different kind of perspective. And I think sometimes that outside in is so healthy, because at first you say, maybe there is a better way to do that type of thing. So have rebel browsers on your teams, guys. That would be my recommendation.